when you're programming, one thing you need to be able to do is you need to be able to fix any bugs that come up in your code. Now I just thought I'd show you a piece of code which has a few bugs in it, so you can see what the error messages look like and how Python does try to help you fix your errors. I've got a piece of code. It's supposed to be asking you how many apples you want. You take in a number and you've got 10 apples in your shop. So if you try and buy more than 10, it will give you an error message, but if you buy less than 10, it will tell you how many you've got left in your shop. That's the idea behind the program. If we try and run the software, initially it comes up with an error saying that this line is invalid syntax. Syntax means the text that you've written, so something we've written there is wrong. And one thing, if you remember about an if statement, is if statements always have to have semicolons at the end of the if, and also I suppose a semicolon at the end of the else. So we fixed two issues. When I try and run it again, it says expected an indent block. Now also with if statements, after you've got your if statement, you need to actually tell it to do some code, and that code needs to be indented. So the if statement, if the number I've asked for is greater than how many I've got in the shop, I'm going to say that's too many. Otherwise, I'm going to deduct the number of apples in my shop and print a message saying, here you go, here's the apples, this is how many I've got left. So the if statement is expecting an indent, so therefore we need to make sure we've got an indent in there. Run the program again. It complains about this line. It says EOL while scanning string literal. EOL means end of line. So it's come to the end of the line when it's part way through a string. So if you look, we've got a single speech mark there, and it's turned S too many green because it thinks that's a string, and we haven't closed our speech mark. Now actually, that's not supposed to be opening a string, that's actually supposed to be part of our text. So if we actually do our string properly, we want to open our string there and close our string there. So our string is in green and it should be all okay. And we'll try and run our software again. It comes up with an invalid syntax. So obviously something is wrong with this piece of code here. And if you look, it's because we haven't got our speech marks again. Now we actually want to say, I have got, and then the variable, and how many we've got left. Now I'm just going to use commas. Remember, we could use the plus, but if we use a plus sign, we have to convert this into a string from an integer. As I use the commas, it's okay to leave it as an integer. Try running our code once more. Now this time it's a different type of error message. Our code has actually passed the checking stage and it's trying to run. But when it tries to run, it says that to print how many apples do you want, it says print is not defined. The code print just doesn't exist. The computer doesn't know what print means. Now the reason being is that I've put print with a capital P, and if you look, it's not purple, it's actually black. So if I put a lowercase p, it will turn purple. Hopefully the computer will know what print means with a lowercase p. We run our software again, it's running at the moment. So just to check that it does completely work, I'm going to try entering it with a valid number of apples. So if we've got 10, I'm going to just take 4. Oh dear, it didn't work. It didn't like taking away some of our apples. So let's have a little look at what happened. It says, not supported between instances of string and integer. We're trying to take away 4 apples, but one of them must be a string and one of them must be an integer. It actually says it's all happening in line 4. So let's look at line 4. Line 4 is this line here. Now what's happening is num is actually a string. And we're trying to say if a string is greater than an integer, and then later on we're actually trying to say an integer equals an integer take a string. So our problem is because num is a string. And it is a number that we want to deal with, so we need to convert it by using int in brackets. So we are casting it. So now num is an integer, so we can say an integer is greater than an integer for our if statement. And we can say an integer variable equals integer take away integer. It's all okay. So let's try testing our software. Again, it looks okay so far. We'll try it with 4. And it says, here you go, I have 6 apples left. So that pathway has worked correctly. Now really, to test our program fully, we need to test the other pathway. So we'll run it one more time, but this time enter a number larger than 10, which should say that we can't do it, which it does. So I've checked both pathways through our software. Our software is working correctly, we've got rid of our errors, job done.